Is MMA about to lose its biggest star? Francis Ngannou, after his, how do we put this? His moral victory against the lineal heavyweight champion Tyson Fury, is now arguably the biggest star in combat sports. Now, I'm not a boxing judge, and unless you're watching this and actually are a boxing judge, you're not a boxing judge as well. So we can all debate and go back and forth, and that's part of the fun of this, isn't it? About whether Francis Ngannou actually beat Tyson in a boxing match. But what we do know is that a novice boxer, it was his first fight inside of a boxing ring, took Tyson Fury to the limit. He floored Tyson Fury, and to the untrained eye, won the fight. Tyson Fury came out of that looking like he'd been in a proper scrap. Black eyes, cuts. Francis Ngannou the next day looked clean as a whistle. And that's after eating for lunch. A ferocious elbow from Fury. I've also spoken to some people I know who do know what they're talking about when it comes to boxing, and they believe that Ngannou won that fight. But the record will show that Tyson won. But now Ngannou is a global superstar. Everyone knows his name. Everyone is waiting to see what he does next. It had been thought that he was going to go back into mixed martial arts next. Fight for the PFL, a company he has a stake in, an interest in. He's going to head up PFL Africa when that launches. He's going to fight on their Super Fight series. At least that was the plan before he became this sensation. The world is now Francis Ngannou's oyster. And if we're honest, there's more intriguing fights of him inside a boxing ring right now than there are inside a cage. When it comes to mixed martial arts, who do you want to see Francis fight? He was so dominant in UFC's heavyweight division that really, there's only one fight that is truly intriguing in mixed martial arts, and that's him versus Jon Jones. When it comes to boxing, suddenly, now after his performance against Tyson Fury, there's so many options. Eddie Hearn is doing all he can to convince Ngannou that him versus AJ. Rumble in the Jungle 2, that's the fight to make. He believes AJ can get through Ngannou. Sure, it's an intriguing fight. Two big, powerful punchers going at it. I'd watch it. Then there's Deontay Wilder. Now that makes sense. Two of the hardest hitters in the world stepping inside of a boxing ring. Interestingly enough, Ngannou's come out and said that Wilder has shown interest in mixed martial arts. That Wilder has been training now for a little while. Is that the fight to make? Is that the fight the PFL could get on board with? One fight inside the boxing ring, one fight inside the smart cage. Does that show who the baddest man on the planet truly is? Whatever Francis does next, we're going to watch. I'm going to tune in because now this guy is elevated to global star status. All kinds of names have been thrown around now in terms of who his first opponent could be in the PFL, and we want to see now what this Ngannou does. What does this Ngannou, who has shown he can now trade with, until that fight took place, someone we considered one of the best, if not the best heavyweight boxer on the planet. What does Ngannou, combined with this new boxing camp, boxing trained, power punching Ngannou, what does that one bring to the smart cage? So whoever Francis fights next, we're going to tune in. Let's be completely frank about that. We want to see where this global superstar is going to go. But when it comes to mixed martial arts, there's a fight we all want to see. A fight we all really have to see. And that's him versus Jon Bones Jones. Now, Francis wants it to happen. It would seem that Jones wants it to happen. PFL definitely want it to happen. The only person standing in the way of that fight is the UFC. Do we think it's going to happen while Jones is under contract to the UFC? No. Why would it? The PFL now is arguably the number 2 promotion in the world, and they're fast expanding and fast growing, and this win for Francis only makes them stronger. Only makes their position stronger. More eyes will now be on that product when Francis is involved. The UFC and Dana White don't want that fight to happen on 2 levels. Number 1, by cross-promoting with the PFL, in some ways it shows that the PFL is on the UFC's level. Now the UFC are number 1, make no mistake about that, but the PFL are starting to snap at their heels. And over the coming years, you get the feeling that snapping is going to become more biting. And they may well draw that gap between the two organisations a lot closer. So by endorsing the PFL and cross-promoting, it endorses them, it shows that they are a rival promotion or promotion on a similar level as the UFC. Dana does not want any of that to happen, no doubt. Just imagine John Jones, who within the mixed martial arts community is considered the greatest of all time. Pound for pound, the best in the world. And I think until the Tyson Fury fight, a lot of people thought that, if it came down to him and Francis, John would win. That may well still be the case. We don't know. We don't know. And we need to find out. But will Dana White want to risk the reputation and the status of the UFC heavyweight champion against an outside organisation? Just imagine for a moment. Francis Ngannou and John Jones fights. John is the heavyweight champ of the UFC. And Francis Ngannou wins. Think of the power that takes away from the UFC. Suddenly, the UFC heavyweight champion is not the baddest man in the world. He's not the greatest heavyweight champion in the world. All of a sudden, the athlete who's the top of the PFL heavyweight division is the baddest man, the certified baddest man in the world. The power dynamic is too great a risk. If you start taking away the UFC champions and showing that other federations can beat them, that damages the UFC badly. So unfortunately, while John is in the UFC, I think it's a big, big ask for this to happen. So what do we think Francis is going to do next? Well, we know that the PFL want him to get back into the smart cage. But what's the biggest fight? What's the most intriguing fight? Perhaps it is Deontay Wilder, one in the smart cage, one in the boxing ring. We know PFL have a relationship with Deontay. In the boxing world now, there are so many options for Ngannou. We talked about AJ. Hey, whoever wins this Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk undisputed battle is the winner of that one, looking for a fight against Ngannou to prove themselves. I don't know if Tyson Fury is going to want that rematch. I wouldn't mind seeing Ngannou test himself against maybe a step down an opponent, but big guys who can bang, just to see how Ngannou hones his skills. He starts to pick up pace to the boxing world. Like Dillian White, Derek Chisora, big guys who we know can bang. But right now, Ngannou's got to pick his moves carefully. How does he do things? And for the PFL, perhaps it's time for the PFL to dip their toes into the boxing world. We know that the PFL are great partners. They could promote the Deontay Wilder boxing fight. They could then take it into the smart cage. They could make that then a series of combat fights. Could you imagine? Could you imagine if AJ wanted to do a 2-fight deal, boxing and mixed martial arts? The world is getting very interesting out there. This fight, the Tyson Fury Francis Ngannou fight, has finally proved a platform in which we can see who the baddest man on the planet is. Is this trend now going to continue? Are we going to see 2-fight deals? Are we going to see more high-level crossover fights? Is it now more about who's actually the baddest MFer on the planet than simply about a boxing heavyweight title or a mixed martial arts heavyweight title? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. But what I do know is it's an exciting time in combat sports.